and welcome to another history episode of Keep the Flame Alive, the podcast for fans of the Olympics and Paralympics. If you love the games, we are the show for you. I am your host, Jill Jaracz, joined as always by my lovely co-host, Alison Brown. Alison, hello, how are you?
I had a professional excuse to watch more wheelchair rugby. I am great.
Well, Sydney was the first time that wheelchair rugby was on the Paralympic program, right?
Yes, it was.
All right, well, we will get to that because I'm sure it was a lot of fun.
So many videos, so much crashing.
Well, and I bet that the play was different too, right?
We'll get
Very
to
different.
that.
Okay, excellent. Well, we are talking wheelchair rugby. You've also got parasailing, which is no longer on the Paralympic program. And I got equestrian for the Olympic side. So let's get into it. I decided to just stick with eventing because that was enough.
It's so amazing to me. Whenever we tell an equestrian story, there's always 15 more stories we could have told.
Oh, yeah, totally. And every time I look at as I was doing the story, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that happened over in dressage." No, you cannot go there because then we'd be here for hours. But I do wanna talk first about the construction of the equestrian venue because there was nothing there. Sydney had to build an equestrian venue. They didn't really have anything that was world class, so they built the Sydney International Equestrian Center at Horsley Park, which is 40 kilometers west of Sydney.
Okay,
Yes.
stop right there. Did you just say it's Horsley Park?
Horsley Park, yes. And everybody I heard talk about this just said it with it was nothing, very nonchalant about the whole thing. So yes, it's there at Horsley Park. And it was in an area of the Sydney suburbs or exurbs that had nothing. Nothing was there. And course designer Michael Etherington Smith said on the Eventing podcast that the land was rough. It was a place to buy and use drugs. It was a place where you dumped your old car, a place with a lot of rough land, which ain't great for horses to land on, and lots of snakes.
What is with the Australian Olympics and putting Olympians in physical danger? First we have the alligators that they're talking about for Brisbane, and now we have snakes.
Not just Olympians, spectators, because Heatherton Smith said, if I remember this correctly, he remembers watching kids roll down the hills on the eventing course, and he's like, "But there's snakes out there," and they were just like, "Nah, well, whatever."
They grow them different down there.
They do. They very much do. So they built this immensely huge facility in about 2 years. They finished it in September 1999 so they could have test events, and they spared no expense because they wanted a world-class facility in Australia as a legacy program, and they put in 37 million Australian dollars to build this facility and 8 million more for the parkland around it. So it has 17 training areas, one indoor arena, an open air stadium, and land for eventing. And although, it's a world class venue, but they said during eventing at Sydney, there were issues with footing, which is the surface, which what just went on my list and surface talk.
What's good for horsies?
Oh my gosh, I didn't even get into the footing in the stadiums because there's all sorts of stuff you can put down. But know that, listeners, that's on my list. So hopefully we will get to that in the foreseeable future. There were also black surfaces that didn't blend in well with the obstacles, so it didn't look great. What made the design tougher was that Sydney was the second and last games, where in eventing, the team and individual events were two separate competitions. So right
Oh, that's
now,
right. Now they basically run it once and it counts twice.
yes, exactly. So, and it was a long course. So they had like 4 different things to do in the cross country, which we'll get to in a second. And not only was it 2 separate events for individual and team, they had to do it on 2 different horses.
What?
Yes, you had 2 different horses if you were doing the team and the individual eventing.
Okay. Keep going. I don't even know what to
which
do with
meant
that.
there were also 2 different cross-country courses that designed because the team went first and the teams could the individuals that were also part of a team could not have that much of an advantage over individuals who were riding individually. So, there were elements that were similar, but then they'd veer off and do something different or you took a different approach or something like that. So, all in all, for this event alone, not including dressage and show jumping, we are talking 96 riders, 96 horses plus 15 reserves for a total of 111 horses for this event. And there were 266 horses at equestrian in total at Sydney. So you think about what kind of grounds they need for that.
Just to house them overnight.
Right. And so the other element in this is Australian quarantine.
Oh, that's right, because the last time Australia had the Olympics in 1956, the equestrian took place in a whole other country because Australia said, "We don't want your dirty horses."
Exactly. But they let them in this time, but it was a long, long process. So horses had to spend 2 weeks in quarantine in Europe, and then they got shipped to Sydney, and they were in isolation for 2 more weeks before they could get out of quarantine. So the process started August 7th. August 23, they took a 30-hour flight from Frankfurt. They landed on the 25th, and quarantine ended September 9, and they had 1 week before the competition began.
Well,
So
this
you
is something we need to look at for Brisbane because are they going to do this kind of draconian measures again?
Right, so you also have isolate oh my gosh, I was listening to a few podcasts and just when I thought about the isolation procedures because of course if the horses needed to work out still, but you had to go in and you had to like change clothes and be like perfectly clean going in and coming out and it was just a huge long process for this. So the magnitude of the event, the long quarantine, the amount of money they spent really started to make sense because of how many horses they needed to take care of in this process. The structure of eventing was tough. So you had day 1, dressage, day 2, cross country, 4 phases of cross country. You have phases 1 and 2, which were 14.3 kilometers of roads and tracks. Stage 3 was a steeplechase, which was 3.1 kilometers of racing grass surface. And then the cross country obstacle course, which was 30 obstacles requiring 45 jumping efforts. And that had to be completed in a set length of time. Now, after 2000, phases 1 through 3 got phased out, and all we have is the cross country obstacle course as the cross country portion of eventing. Then you have day 3, which is show jumping. And to determine the winner of the event, you had the lowest number of combined penalties win. Teams are 4 people and 4 horses. They take the 3 best scores for each segment. So sometimes your score could count, sometimes they didn't. And in the individual, it was your horse and rider had the lowest number of penalties wins. So, of course, because it was a home games, the Aussies hoped to win their 3rd gold medal in a row for the team. And those first gold medals were important because that meant funding and consistency in training came about. And they developed a system, even if a lot of Australian riders were scattered across the globe. Because who was on this team was Philip Dutton. Because remember, he was training in the US at the time when we talked with him.
Right, he
So,
competed for both.
yes, he was on House Doctor. He had won at Atlanta but now was on a different horse. There was Andrew Hoy on Darien Powers. They won together at Atlanta. They were on the team. Back on the team after missing Atlanta was Matt Ryan on Kibba Sandstone, and he was on the gold medal team at Barcelona. He's now on a different horse. And then brand new to the team is Stuart Tinney on Jeepster. And this is Stuart's first of 4 games. He would go on to compete at 2004 and then 2016 and 2020. Not on the team, who we met in Atlanta, Wendy Schaefer, who had broken her leg 2 months before the games. Remember her?
Yes, I do.
And then Jillian Rolton, who famously had multiple falls in the cross country portion and got so banged up she couldn't use her arm, but she still finished because remember, she said, "You don't go to the games to be a wuss. don't go to the games to be a wimp. And
I do remember that as I think my favorite story from Atlanta, and such an
uh,
Australian quote.
oh, it was, and she was hoping to make the team, did not make the team. I think she was working with a new horse, and it just didn't work out, and it was tough. She was part of the opening ceremony. I believe she came in with one of the flags. Still beloved in Australia at that point. So the dressage portion of team is first. Andrew Hoy gets the top score. He has a record-breaking 30.60, which helped catapult the Australians into first place. And after the dressage, Australia's in the lead, followed by Great Britain, who are just like 3 points behind. So it's really close. Then USA, France, and New Zealand. Going into cross country. 50,000 people show up to watch cross country. This is a sellout. And of course, everyone's surprised but not surprised, 'cause nobody knew if anybody would come and watch this, but they did. They packed the place, which didn't help every horse, let's be honest. Some of them got jittery. This is something that is really cool. Eventing Nation has a link to this app which has recreated maps of different very important cross-country courses. So they've got a map, and then you could click on the different fences and see pictures and hear audio from them. So it is super cool. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. This course is full of interesting references to local history. Like there's one that's referencing a local farm stand, and it's full of fruit and veg. There is one called Pamolwi's Waterhole, who is named after a local Aboriginal resistance fighter who battled the British in the 1790s, but he was captured, and in 1802 the Brits executed him and beheaded him. There were also many fences that had Aboriginal references, including one that was like a snake. That was really cool, but lots of really beautiful painting in them. There was a stockade, and of course, there was one with giant spiders.
Do you remember well, I'm sure you remember. In Tokyo, we talked about the naked sumo
Yes.
wrestler. I'm not sure which is scarier, the snakes and the giant spider or the giant sumo tush.
I think the giant sumo tush, because these are very, I would say, tasteful, but the snake body is the top of the fence, so you can you see the head on one side, but it's got that Aboriginal painting all along the body, so that's really cool looking. And then the spiders are, it's a fence with a top rail, and then there's a bottom rail, and then the webs are in these holes, and then there's a big spider there, so that's just kind of funky.
And the artist had plenty of snakes to work with right
Right.
there.
And then, of course, the end was the homage to Athens, and it was a Hellenic omega that they had to jump through. So that was very, very cool. Still, Andrew Hoy had another fantastic ride that helped keep Australia on top. France sadly dropped to 8th place in the cross country portion. They had 2 riders retire, and then the other 2 withdrew from the show jumping portion, and the team finished 10th. It was a hot day that day. Several competitors were disqualified or they withdrew. Others couldn't pass inspection before the jumping day. So that was also tough. After cross country, we are now looking at Australia's in the lead still. Great Britain has fallen back over 10 points, but they're still in second, still within shooting distance. Third is New Zealand, and fourth is USA. Show jumping, final day, beautiful day. It is 28 degrees Celsius, so just over 82 degrees Fahrenheit. Kind of hot, but okay. Jumping, another sellout show. 20 to 25,000 people in the main arena. They are hoping that the home team will win its third goal, but jumping is Australia's weakest discipline, and that led to a little bit of drama. Australian Matthew Ryan led off. Crowd did not help him. He lost their entire lead immediately with penalties. Our Shukhlistani Philip Dutton also had a tough round. He had 3 fallen rails and a time fault. New Zealand, who is sitting in third at this point, they have a miserable time.
Oh, my silver ferns.
I know. Mark Todd is the only team member to finish the course. 2 others withdrew. Blythe Tate, who had won individual gold and team bronze in Atlanta, he was eliminated. They're completely out of it. They finish 8th. Then Australian Stuart Tinney has a great round. So it's going good. Just one rail down and no time penalties. But it's still neck and neck for Great Britain because they're having some good runs. And Pippa Funnell is Great Britain's last hope. She drops 2 rails, has 3 time faults. Andrew Hoy is up last for Australia. He basically has the gold, but then he knocks down a few rails.
Does nobody wanna win?
I guess not, but
It's just one of those
ultimately,
days, you know, we've all
yes.
seen competitions like that where just one person I certainly seen it a ton in figure skating. One person falls and somehow it just kinda gets in everybody's head.
Yes, yes. But even though he had a couple rails down, does not matter. They go on to win gold. They beat Great Britain by 14.2 points. Great Britain has a 14.8 point lead over the USA, who got bronze in part because David O'Connor jumps cleanly. And the crowd goes wild. It's incredible. And it's really weird to watch because they do the medal ceremony right away. And again, it is really, really weird when they have gold medalists announced first, and then you have to watch silver and bronze. Like, the switch over to making that crescendo for the gold medalists to get their award last was a much better move.
Now, was Princess Anne involved in the medal ceremony?
I don't think so. I think it was somebody who was Australian. So everybody was super excited.
Is Andrew Hoy the same equestrian who's been competing, like, since St. Louis 1904 and is still
Yes.
going? Oh, yeah, that's him. Okay.
That's him. That's him. If you know one equestrian, because he's been in half the Olympics. Yes, it's Andrew Hoy. So we'll move on to the individual eventing. Had the gold been awarded from the best performances in the team, like we do it today, Stuart Tinney from Australia would have won. He didn't even compete in the individual event, right? So this was basically won on day 1. David O'Connor from the USA had an amazing dressage ride on a gelding custom made. And after that, he was in the lead, never let it go. So let's look at what happened next. After the dressage, in second place is Marina Kienke from Germany on Longchamp. Heidi Antikastidis on Michaelmas. She is from Greece. She is the first athlete to represent Greece in equestrian. Then,
Really?
yes,
That's surprising.
it is surprising, but maybe it's an individual event. I don't know. The Sydney official report was gushing about her, like, "Oh, this is the next great talent." Mark Todd from New Zealand was on I Spy 2, and Andrew Hoy, who is now riding on Swizzle Inn. After the cross country event, it was a bad day. Cross country was a horrible day. The course is nearly 15 miles long, 29 obstacles in the last 4.6 miles. So most of it is stacked at the end. 38 pairs started, 25 finished. Most of the withdrawals or eliminations are from falls. And the worst fall involves Mary Jane Tunbridge of Bermuda. She's riding Bermuda's Gold. The pair was in 21st place after dressage. On the second fence, they went down. Bermuda's Gold broke its leg and had to be euthanized. So, not a great day for horses or for riders because Roberto Macedo from Brazil broke his pelvis and Nils Haagensen from Denmark bruised his shoulder, and they both had to go to the hospital. In the cross country, Conky was eliminated, so our German is out of contention. The other top contenders are clean. So we now are David O'Connor is still in first because he went clean on the cross country. Antikazidis from Greece is also clean. And then we have Mark Todd and Andrew Hoy. Andrew Hoy has had a clean cross country run, so that's good. He's moving up, but still not looking good for him. Only 10 riders finished day 2 without any penalties. It's a tough. You talk about tough courses. This is a tough one. In jumping, the course seemed to be tighter than the team event course, and you have 13 jumps. They were also a little more imposing than the team ones done. Andrew Hoy, jumps cleanly. Switzerland, who had been much vilified during the event, apparently.
How dare they
Jumped.
be mean to the horse?
I don't know. Well, he jumped boldly that day.
He was
So
swizzling.
that's right. Mark Todd also jumps cleanly, but he has 3 time faults. Antikazidis had a tough round. She had 10 jumping penalties and a time penalty. She ends up in 6th place. And last to jump is David O'Connor. He's still in the lead, but if he knocked off 2 rails, Andrew Hoy would win. He knocked off 1, and then he almost had like this massive mistake where he got lost in the stadium and almost made a wrong turn to the wrong fence. And if that happened, he would have been eliminated. And that fence that he was supposed to go to was a solid wall. And the crowd figured out what was going on and they started yelling, "The wall, the wall, the wall," to help him. He claimed he did not hear them. He also claimed he was swiveling his head so much to find the next fence that he got a sore neck. But he figured it out indeed, finished with just the 1 down rail, and eked out a 5.8 win over Hoy, giving the U.S. its first equestrian gold medal since 1984.
Against Andrew Hoy, who was also jumping in 84.
So David O'Connor, that was his last Olympics. He has been heavily involved with the sport since. His wife has competed in 2008 and 2012. Andrew Hoy has done 3 more games. He's done 2004, 2012, and 2020. He got the team silver and individual bronze in 2020. Not bad for 20 years later.
When he was 106 years old.
Mark Todd from New Zealand. The official report said that this was supposed to be his last Olympics, but he came back in 2008 and did 3 more and got team bronze in 2012.
These equestrians just can't let go, and I love that.
I know. So the facility is still used today, and it seems to be in heavy use, not just for equestrian stuff, but also other events. Like you could have your wedding there, you can have your conferences there. They've had fun runs and things like that. So it seems like it was a good use of money. Everybody I listened to on podcasts kept talking about how wonderful these games were for equestrian and just how top-notch the facility was, and how it was so good that Australia now has these world-class facilities, and you can see it in the writing that's coming up. They haven't done well in the most recent Olympics, but I think they at least have something that can home grow people rather than being forced to go to other countries. I
Right,
don't
and
know
when
how.
it's Australia, it's not like, "Oh, we don't have this here," but it's in Canada. I mean, when you're in
Right.
Australia and you don't have it, you're probably going pretty far.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm sure that a lot of people still train and live in and are based in other places just because competitions are there, but that doesn't mean that you can't grow good talent back home. So that is a good thing for there. So sources for me were Associated Press, Channel 7, Eventing Nation, the Eventing Podcast, the Federation Equestrian Internationale, thehorse.com, New York Times, Olympics.com, and the Sydney 2000 official report.
Okay, well, I'm also gonna be talking a bunch about the host nation in
All
my
right.
2 stories. So there were 2 new sports that became official medal events at the Sydney 2000 Paralympics: parasailing and wheelchair rugby. Both were listed as mixed gender events. There were no women in wheelchair rugby. There were 2 in parasailing.
Wow.
So the parasailing included 2 competitions: the 3-person sonar keelboat and the single 2.4-meter keelboat. And in the sonar, athletes were assigned a point value based on their visual or physical impairment. And the total point value of the 3 sailors could not exceed 14. So similar to what we see in wheelchair rugby and wheelchair basketball. So you had a wide variety of disabilities. So, sailors in the single-person boat could have physical disabilities classed from 1 to 7, and generally those were limb disabilities, amputations, cerebral palsy. You didn't really see too many athletes with visual impairments in the single person boat. And I believe this was the same when you talked about the Olympic regatta, where they sail in Sydney Harbor and you see Sydney Bridge and the Sydney Opera House. So, of course, the videos are fantastic to watch. And German Heiko Kroger dominated the single keelboat races. The tricky winds during the regatta were a real challenge for the small boats, but not for Kroger. He won 5 of the 7 races in the 17 boat regatta, securing the gold medal before the last race even started. Jen Als Andersen of Denmark sailed a solid regatta to win silver, and American Thomas Brown captured the bronze in the last race by only 1 point against the pre Paralympics favorite, Peter Thompson from Australia.
Gotta love a homegrown winner.
So the 3-person sonar races became a fight between Australia, Germany, and Canada. The host country produced solid results, staying in the top 3 for all of 2 of the races, the 9 races. And at the time, the rules allowed for the lowest score of the races to be thrown out. So they had one sort of sketchy race, and then everything else was 1, 2, 3, and one was a 4. So they were very solidly the gold medalist by 6 points. But only 1 point separated silver and bronze, with Germany beating out Canada on that last race.
Oh, wow. That one had to be tough.
It's fun to watch because you get to see all the pretty things, and the announcers get very excited, even just at that end of the race, because it was very hard to find videos of the sailing. But when people get excited about a finish of a sailing race, they get really excited. So, honestly, the best part about the sailing was this Australian team and the characters involved. The skipper of Australia was Noel Robbins, and he was no stranger to high-pressure racing. He had a broken spine when he was 21 years old, and that left him what was described as a partial quadriplegic, which means he had limited mobility and strength in all of his limbs, but you would still see him walking or using a walker. Didn't stop him from continuing his racing. He had raced as a kid and he continued, and in fact was twice skipper of an America's Cup entry,
Get out of town.
once in 1977 and once in 1981. And in 2000, by winning the gold medal at 55 years old, he is the oldest sailor to ever win a gold medal in the Paralympics.
Wow. Holy cow.
Sadly, only 3 years later, he was struck by a car and killed on the streets of Australia. Yeah, it was, and he has been awarded posthumously all kinds of honors for this whole team, but the Sailing Hall of Fame and the Order of Australia. So he was quite beloved in the sailing community in Australia. His teammate, Jamie Dunross, became the first quadriplegic to circumnavigate Australia unassisted in 2010.
Holy cow. That's a long trip. Australia is a big country.
Exactly. And I'm always amazed when people do any kind of sailing solo, because that's just
Right.
lonely.
Right. The whole idea of preparing for that and what you need to do and take with you supplies-wise and gear-wise and backups, like, it just boggles my
We
mind.
had enough trouble packing for Beijing and Paris. And the third member of that crew, Graham Martin, competed again at the Paralympics in 2008 in again the 3-person sonar, where he won bronze. So,
Very
as you
nice.
mentioned at the top of the show, sailing is no longer in the Paralympics. It was removed after Rio 2016 because the IPC declared that sailing did not fulfill the IPC handbook's minimum for worldwide reach. So, in Sydney, for example, there were 22 countries represented. Now, for individual sports, the sport must be regularly practiced in 32 countries across 3 IPC regions. And for team sports, and you could say the 3-person sonar is a team sport, you need at least 24 countries in 3 regions.
Oh, wow.
But World
Huh.
Sailing has not given up. They continue to work to expand participation and lobby to get back in the Paralympics. So with any luck, we will see them back in Australia in 2032.
Yeah, because I remember they were lobbying heavy to get into back into LA 2028, and they didn't get chosen, only, sport climbing got chosen. So I'm curious as to how they've beefed up since then, because I mean, much like equestrian, boating people love their boats.
And much like equestrian, boating is extremely expensive.
Hmm, that too. Wheelchair rugby, let's get to it.
So the other sport that was new was wheelchair rugby. It was first developed in Winnipeg, Canada in 1976 as an alternative to wheelchair basketball for people who were in wheelchairs but with additional disabilities in their arms and hands. They called it murder ball because
Wait,
of its physical full contact play. And as the sport spread, and it spread very quickly, the name changed first to quad rugby and then to wheelchair rugby because I think calling competitions murder ball might have been frowned upon. So in 1993, the International Wheelchair Rugby Federation was formed, and less than a year later, the IPC recognized IWRF as the governing body for wheelchair rugby. The IWRF held its first world championships in 1995, and it debuted as a demonstration sport in Atlanta. This thing was growing very quickly in popularity and play across the world. And in Sydney 2000 was its official medal debut.
no
In
duh.
Right, I mean, this sport is fantastic. So in 1996, as a demonstration sport, USA won gold, Canada won silver, and New Zealand beat Great Britain for the bronze. Just kind of tuck that away.
Okay.
So in the tournament in Sydney, you've got 8 teams divided into 2 groups. Group A is USA, Australia, Sweden, and Switzerland. Group B is Canada, Germany, Great Britain, and New Zealand. So as we started to talk about at the top of the show again, gameplay was very different 25 years ago. You've got more straight on just crashing to crash. Very smash mouth, very in your face, a lot less complexity in passing and tactics, but so much fun to watch, so much speed. And honestly, the players looked physically bigger than a lot of the players we saw in Paris. And I think that's just because they would just crash into each other. So you needed a little bit more brute strength and a little less finesse back in the day. So both the US and New Zealand went undefeated in pool play, and Australia won one game, very close to the US, and Canada also had one loss to New Zealand. So the way the tournament worked at the time, they skipped right from pool play to semifinals.
Okay.
So those are your 4 semifinalists. And in the semifinals, the US handily defeated Canada, while Australia beat New Zealand by 1 point.
Ooh. And I have to say Canada. Well, A, I'm surprised that Canada is the home. I don't know why I didn't know this, but I feel like it's a very American sport, but it's also not surprising given that hockey is so big in Canada.
I mean, this is
That
Winnipeg, so they needed
yeah,
to do something inside that felt, I think, like ice hockey, that would have that. No, because probably a lot of people who've been injured and become paralyzed in some way probably played hockey as a kid.
right, well, yeah.
And this was very appealing, and I think it's so interesting that the first countries that were really, really good are all these English-speaking countries that kinda have a similar, I don't wanna say similar roots, but I in many ways they do, Canada, US, New Zealand, Australia, all these, and even Great Britain was on top, kind of these Great Britain and their original colonies.
Right.
And this sport really took on there. Now we have Japan and China, and it spread. But the early days, it was people who like smash mouth sports. So in the bronze medal match, New Zealand defeated Canada 44-32, and the Silver Ferns went on to win the gold in Athens 2004, again beating Canada in that medal round game.
Wow. Poor Canada.
I know. A little sad. But you know what wasn't sad? The gold medal game. So we've got the gold medal game happening on day 11, last day of the Paralympics, and the Australian team, nicknamed the Steelers, including several members of their coaching staff, bleached their hair
Oh my
to
gosh.
a they had no toner. So this is a frightening shade of yellow. I couldn't figure out if they did this at the beginning of the tournament or for the gold medal game because the videos were not in order,
Okay.
but if you weren't bald, you were blonde. And this is kids, don't bleach your hair at home. Just like today, the match between US and Australia was physical and very close. The score flipped back and forth the whole game. The biggest lead was Australia by 3 points in the third quarter, but the Americans bounced back, and with less than 30 seconds to go, the US leads by 1 point, and the wheel on American Steve Pate's chair is damaged or loosed in some way and needs to be repaired. So they get a 1-minute timeout. It breaks the Steelers' momentum on their comeback. And after the equipment timeout, the US scored another try. Then Australian George Huck scored with less than 9 seconds to go, but leaving the US still ahead by 1 point. With only 8.8 seconds left, the US just has to hang on to possession. But they can't hold the ball for that long. You have to pass.
Oh, wow, this had to be incredible to
The
watch.
It was fantastic. Clearly, the stadium or the arena was full and loud and wild. The US makes 2 passes successfully, and they win the gold medal 32-31.
Wow. What a debut for the sport.
It's everything we still love about wheelchair rugby with more crashes and some very frightening blonde hair. But a couple of notable players I want to mention that were in this tournament. Team Canada included Patrice Simard, who competed in Sydney 2000, Athens 2004, Beijing 2008, London 2012, Rio 2016,
Wow.
and Tokyo 2020.
Wow.
Gets better. He's still playing on Team Canada, even though he was not named to the Paris team. He just played last month at the regional
Wow.
world championship qualifiers.
Wow. That is incredible. Not just, like, keeping up the physical capabilities, but also looking at, like, how gameplay changed so drastically, especially with speed, because 'cause you're bashing into people less and moving a little bit more. Like, the tactics and how you keep up with that physically, that's incredible, and to maintain that on such a high level, jeez.
And he is, needless to say, absolutely beloved in the Canadian wheelchair rugby world, and also seems like a really nice guy. So it was fun listening to some interviews with this lovely little Quebecois accent, and just now I wanna watch him play more. And Brad Deberley, who played for Australia in 2000 and 2004, became their head coach and is still their head coach from 2008, and he led to the team to a bronze medal last year in Paris.
Wow, man. I guess I know what I'm doing with my afternoon.
I have links,
World.
don't worry, I have links. So, sources for me are Paralympics website, Wheelchair Rugby Australia, USA Wheelchair Rugby, the United States Wheelchair Rugby Association, Paralympic Canada, Olympics.com, New Zealand Wheelchair Rugby, Yachting World, Australian Sailing, Australian Paralympic Committee, Scuttlebutt Sailing News, Yachts and Yachting, and Inside the Games.
Wow, excellent. What an action-packed
I'm exhausted
games.
just talking
I
about it.
know. Holy cow, between just the equestrian alone and I mean, every event has stories. Every event.
And every story has a million stories we can go from that. Do you know Andrew Hoy is still jumping horses next week?
Probably. I would not be
Oh my
surprised.
goodness, Andrew Hoy and Patrice Simard should get together.
They should. They absolutely should. Oh boy, oh boy. Well, listeners, that's going to do it for this episode. Let us know what you remember from Sydney 2000.
And we Do love hearing from you. You can chat with us and other listeners on our Facebook group, Keep the Flame Alive Podcast. Email us at flamealivepod@gmail.com. The voicemail and text line is always open at 208-352-6348. That's 208 Flame It. And if you need more Olympics and Paralympics in your life, and who doesn't, sign up for our newsletter at flamealivepod.com. We'll have a link to that in the show notes.
Next week, we will get into the World Games. The World Games has started, basically, and we will have week 1 coverage. So I am excited to be watching some different sports or different versions of Olympic sports, and we are going to have fun. If you're watching World Games, just go find our Facebook group, even if it's just for a couple weeks, and hang out with us because we do have some World Games junkies there. I know listener Brittany's excited. Listener John is excited as well, and so we will have World Games chat there, and it will be fun. I'm
And
excited.
we're going to get
Go
a
ahead.
Chinese opening ceremony again.
I know. Very much looking forward to that. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, keep the flame alive.